My name is Whitney. I'm 26 years old and I work the night shift as a nurse in the emergency room. My job begins when most people are already asleep and ends just as the sun starts to rise. Each shift lasts 12 to 14 hours, filled with the constant beeping of heart monitors, the sharp scent of disinfectant, and emergencies so intense they leave you breathless. I've grown used to the pressure, used to standing steady on the fragile line between life and death. But one morning, I learned that some shocks hurt more than even the hardest shift. In everyone's life, there are mornings that change everything forever. For me, that morning was March 11. After a grueling 1-2 hour night shift, my hands still smelling faintly of latex gloves and hospital soap, I drove home exhausted, longing for nothing more than a hot shower and a few hours of sleep. Instead, I found that the place I once called home had been completely shut off from me. My father, Gerald Warren, had changed all the locks on the house, the same house I had been paying him $1,200 a month to live in. I stood there in disbelief, still in my scrubs, my body aching from work, trying to process what I was seeing. Then I noticed my belongings. My personal things, everything from my nursing textbooks to irreplaceable keepsakes, had been thrown out onto the lawn like garbage on collection day. Boxes torn open, clothes scattered across the grass, pieces of my life exposed to the street for anyone to see. In that moment, the exhaustion from my shift faded into something much sharper: betrayal, shock, a pain far deeper than anything I had faced inside the ER. I slid my old key into the keyhole and twisted it hard. Once, then again. The door didn't budge. My phone vibrated. A message from my father lit up the screen. "Your room belongs to Megan now. Get your things from the lawn. Don't make a scene." In that instant, I understood. My life had just been thrown outside, cold, exposed, and disposable right after a night spent fighting to save the lives of complete strangers. Just hours earlier, I had been holding pressure on a wound, whispering reassurance to a terrified patient, moving non-stop under harsh fluorescent lights. I had given everything I had to people who didn't even know my name. And now, I was standing in my own driveway, locked out like I was nothing. It hadn't always been like this. 3 years earlier, when I had just graduated from nursing school, I had options. I could have rented my own apartment. I had the qualifications, the job offer, and enough savings to start fresh. But my father had convinced me otherwise. "Why waste money paying strangers?" he'd said, his voice calm and reasonable, "when you can help your own family." At 23, it sounded practical, even loving. Living at home meant familiarity, food already in the fridge, no coin-operated laundry, no worrying about utilities or leases. It felt smart, responsible, efficient. So I agreed. I told myself I was being financially wise. I told myself I was supporting my family. I never imagined that one day, the same house I helped pay for would shut its doors on me without warning. We agreed on $1,200 a month more than the rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the area. There was no contract, no paperwork, just a handshake, and monthly Zelle transfers clearly labeled rent. I told myself I was investing in my family, helping my parents cover the mortgage. But the truth was, I wasn't just a generous tenant. I was unpaid help. After finishing 1-2 hour night shifts in the ER, I would come home exhausted and still make breakfast for everyone at 7:30 inches the morning. I scrubbed the bathroom, took out the trash, wiped down counters, folded laundry. For 3 years, I carried the weight of the house without once hearing a simple "thank you." Then, everything started to change when my younger sister got engaged. Within days, the house felt different, louder, brighter, buzzing with excitement. My father was suddenly full of energy, making grand plans. He talked about hosting a big engagement party, repainting the living room, hanging string lights, ordering a congratulatory banner. He moved through the house with enthusiasm, like a man who had just won the lottery. I stood there watching it all, feeling strangely out of place. 2 years earlier, I had asked him to fix the water-damaged ceiling in my bedroom. The stain had spread wide, nearly the size of a dinner plate. He had nodded vaguely and forgotten about it the next day. But now, he was ready to repaint the entire house in a single weekend for Megan's wedding. One evening, after another long shift, I walked into my room, and found him standing there with a measuring tape, stretching it along the walls, calculating the space. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice tight with confusion. "Just figuring out storage," he said shortly. Then he walked out. A quiet sense of unease settled in my chest. Something felt off, but I pushed the thought away, convincing myself I was being paranoid. I had no idea that he wasn't measuring for storage. He was measuring for my replacement. The week before the engagement party, I came home just before dawn and noticed that one corner of the living room had been cleared out. Furniture had been shifted. Cardboard boxes were stacked along the hallway walls. The house felt like it was rearranging itself. Megan walked around, giving directions as if the place were already hers. She glanced at me casually and said, "Can you make some appetizers? You're good at that." Not, "Please." Not, "Could you help me?" Just a light, effortless command. I nodded like I always did. But something inside me shifted. For the first time, I could clearly see it. I was being phased out of the very home I had financially supported and physically maintained for 3 years. Then came March 11. I had just finished one of the worst shifts of my career, multiple motorcycle crashes, a cardiac arrest, blood on my shoes, exhaustion weighing down every step. All I wanted was sleep. Instead, I found my belongings scattered across the lawn under the pale morning fog. Black trash bags, water-soaked cardboard boxes, and my grandmother's wooden jewelry box lying in a puddle. My chest tightened. A message from Gerald appeared on my phone. "Your room belongs to Megan now. Come get your stuff and don't cause drama." My mother, Carol, texted shortly after, saying it was my father's better decision. Better. For 11 minutes, I sat silently on the cold front steps, staring at the door that no longer opened for me. And in those 11 minutes, I made a decision that changed my life. I stopped trying to be the good daughter. I did the math in my head. 3 years. $1,200 a month. 4,200美元. That's how much I had paid Gerald Warren without a contract, without protection, just to be thrown out without warning. In that moment, something inside me hardened. Not anger, not even sadness. Clarity. I had spent years proving my loyalty. Now, it was time to protect myself. Then I saw the brand new lock on the door. I slid my old key in and twisted it hard. It didn't move. My phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen. "Your room belongs to Megan now. Get your things from the lawn. Don't make a scene." I sank down onto the freezing front step, still in my scrubs, the faint smell of hospital disinfectant clinging to the fabric. My heart pounded unevenly in my chest. 3 years of rent, 3 years of effort, 3 years of sacrifice. Reduced to a single text message. If you were me, what would you do next? Comment 1 if you think I should stand up and demand justice. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app. The balance stared back at me. Just under $2,100. Not enough for a security deposit. Not enough to buy a bed. Not enough to truly start over. I looked back at the lawn. A photo album had soaked through with morning dew. The picture from my nursing school graduation was curling at the edges. My proudest moment after years of studying and sleepless nights treated like trash. Something inside me cracked. But I didn't go to a friend's house. I didn't wander the streets. I drove back to the hospital. I sat quietly in the staff break room, the hum of vending machines and distant monitor alarms oddly comforting. It was the only place that felt safe in that moment. The only place where I still belonged. At the hospital, I was needed, respected, trusted. Outside those walls, I had just become disposable. And sitting there under the fluorescent lights, I realized something important. They may have locked me out of the house, but they hadn't taken my strength. There, in the quiet hum of the hospital break room, I told Donna everything. Donna wasn't the type to offer soft sympathy or dramatic comfort. She listened carefully, arms crossed, eyes sharp. When I finished, she asked just one question. "Do you have proof of the transfers?" I nodded. 36 transactions over 3 years, every single one labeled rent. Without hesitation, Donna called her husband a lawyer. I sat there, still in my wrinkled scrubs, listening as she explained the situation in calm, precise terms. Within minutes, I learned something that shifted the ground beneath my feet. What my father had done wasn't just cruel, It was illegal. Changing the locks and throwing out a tenant's belongings without notice? That was unlawful eviction. For the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. Silence was no longer an option. If I didn't stand up for myself, no one else would do it for me. I placed my phone face down on the table and stared at the tiled floor. In that moment, I realized I hadn't just lost a place to live. I had lost my place in my own family. But I hadn't lost my voice. I filed 3 actions in court. First, a complaint for illegal eviction. Second, a claim in small claims court seeking financial compensation. Third, a report to the IRS regarding unreported rental income. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. For 3 years, I had played the role of the obedient daughter, the reliable one, the helpful one, the quiet one. Now, I was choosing something different. I was choosing to protect myself. And for the first time since that morning on the lawn, I didn't feel powerless. I felt prepared. At the court hearing, my father remained arrogant. He insisted it was a private family matter and claimed the money I gave him was simply help, not rent. He barely looked at me when he spoke, as if I were overreacting, embarrassing him by bringing family business into a courtroom. But the judge saw through it. Judge Hernandez carefully reviewed the evidence. 36 electronic transfers over 3 years, each one clearly labeled rent. There were text messages confirming monthly payments. No missed months. No ambiguity. The word rent, the judge explained, wasn't casual. It established intent. And intent, backed by consistent financial transactions, created a legal landlord-tenant relationship, regardless of whether there was a written contract, family or not. The courtroom grew very quiet when she said that. My father's argument that it was merely financial support collapsed under the weight of documented proof. You don't help someone in identical monthly amounts, labeled as rent, for 3 straight years. You collect rent. Judge Hernandez ruled that what he had done, changing the locks without notice and removing my belongings, constituted unlawful eviction. The court ordered Gerald to pay $10,000, the maximum allowed in small claims court, plus additional penalties related to the illegal eviction. For the first time since March 11, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. It wasn't just about the money. It was about recognition. Recognition that what happened to me was real. Recognition that family does not place anyone above the law. Recognition that my voice mattered. My father left the courtroom without speaking to me, but I didn't need him to. The judge had already said everything that needed to be said. But the hardest blow came 6 weeks later, in the form of a white envelope from the IRS. Failing to report $43,200 in income over 3 years had triggered an audit. By the time they added up the back taxes, penalties, and interest, he owed nearly $22,000. The father who once hurled insults at his daughter without hesitation was now scrambling under the weight of debt and the cold distance of neighbors who had watched him throw his own child's belongings out onto the street. Within minutes, the whole neighborhood knew. The man who had always had the loudest voice in the family now sat quietly on the front porch, holding papers that proved he was in the wrong. And for the first time in my life, I felt the balance of power between us truly shift. My father lowered his head. My mother broke down in tears. My sister stood frozen. No one said a word. If you were in my position, would you have had the courage to walk into that courtroom? Comment 1, if you believe that sometimes justice matters more than keeping the peace. I didn't feel smug. I didn't celebrate. What I felt was something quieter, an inevitable ending to what had begun that morning, when my belongings lay soaked on the lawn. Justice isn't loud. It arrives quietly, slowly, but with precision. And when it comes, no one can escape the consequences. 3 months later, I signed the lease on my first apartment in my own name. It was small, just 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a window overlooking the parking lot, but it was mine. The rent was $890 a month, less than what I used to pay my father. For the first time in years, I slept in a room without worrying that the locks might be changed by morning. I bought a simple bed, a second-hand dining table, hung my nursing degree on the wall, and carefully restacked the books that had once been damp with morning dew. Every time I finished a shift and stepped through that door, I felt a deep sense of peace. No criticism, no pressure, no constant need to prove myself or keep anyone else happy. I'm no longer angry, and I'm not waiting for an apology, either. What I gained from all of this was clarity. For years, I believed that staying silent was how you protect a family, that if you kept giving in, you would eventually be appreciated. But I've learned something important. When kindness has no boundaries, it becomes an invitation for others to take advantage of you. If you're living in a home where your kindness is treated as a given, remember this: you deserve respect. Keep your records, know your rights, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. It simply means you're no longer allowing others to define your worth. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the very first step toward real freedom. In the end, I realized the most painful loss wasn't the money or even the house. It was losing the illusion that if I were good enough, selfless enough, I would be loved fairly. Some people don't change not because they don't see the harm they cause, but because they choose not to see it. And sometimes, walking away is the only way to hold on to what little self-respect you have left. I've learned that family is not a place where you have to trade your dignity just to stay. Real love doesn't make you afraid. It doesn't force you into silence. It doesn't demand that you endure pain so others can feel comfortable. If a relationship only survives because you're constantly shrinking yourself, then it's no longer love, it's control. Today, I live in my small home. I pay my own bills. I lock my own doors. I make my own decisions. It's not luxurious, not perfect, but it's peaceful. And for the first time, I no longer feel like an unwanted outsider in my own family. If this story resonates with you, remember, you are not selfish for protecting yourself. You're simply choosing to live in alignment with your own values. And sometimes, having the courage to stand up for yourself is the beginning of an entirely new life. For a long time, I believed that enduring hardship was a sign of maturity, that staying silent was the way to keep the peace, that giving in was what a good daughter was supposed to do. But eventually, I realized this: not every sacrifice is appreciated, and not every silence brings peace. The day I saw my belongings lying soaked on the lawn, I didn't just lose a room. I lost the illusion that I was valued in my own family. And in that very moment, I began learning how to value myself. I didn't file the lawsuit out of revenge. I did it to say one simple thing: I deserve better. I deserve to be treated fairly. I deserve respect. I deserve to have a place to stand, whether in my family or out in the world. If you're living somewhere your kindness is treated like an obligation, where your efforts are taken for granted, remember this: you have the right to say no. You have the right to walk away. And you have the right to start over. Don't wait until the hurt runs too deep before you learn to set boundaries. Don't let your kindness become the rope that ties you down. When you choose yourself, you're not losing anyone. You're finding your true self again, strong, worthy, and free. After everything that happened, I realized the hard